Hi everyone. The purpose of this video is to help you get ready for your quiz over fractions, decimal, and percent equivalents. So go ahead and work out the problems with me as I do them. All right, so the first one says write 3/5 as a decimal. Now that is one of the ones that we should have memorized. And remember, a tip for these is when we're dealing with fifths is if we just double the numerator, we will have our answer. So this is going to be 0.6. But I want to remind you that if you didn't remember that, you could do the numerator divided by the denominator. Remember that that's how to work these out. We said it was okay to use a calculator for this, but I'll go ahead and show you how we would do this by hand. So I can't divide 5 into 3, so add a decimal point and a 0, and then 5 divides into 36 times. 6 times 5 is 30. When we subtract, we get 0. So our answer here should be 0.6. And so we want to go down and circle B here then when we're going to make that face. Our second one here says to write 28% as a decimal. Remember, when we're changing from a percent to a decimal, so percent to decimal, we just move our decimal point 2 places to the left, okay? So move decimal to the left 2, all right? We find that decimal right here, move it 2 places. And so this becomes 0.28 as a decimal. And so that would be answer B here. Percent, well, we're going to go to a decimal first and then to a percent. So whenever we have to go from a fraction to a percent, first we're going to have to do the decimal in the middle, right? So first it'll be fraction to decimal to percent, all right? Now, with the tenths, it's real easy to write our percents, right? 1 out of 10, just use the numerator, I'm sorry, 0.1. We just use the numerator as our decimal number. And then to change that to a percent, then we move our decimal point 2 places to the right. Remember, to go from a decimal to a percent, instead of moving left, we're moving to the right 2 places, okay? And so this would become 10%, all right? So our answer here is A, 10%. Our next one here asks us to write 0.065 as a percent. Remember, to go from a decimal to a percent, we want to move our decimal point 2 places to the right. So we're going to take this decimal point and move it 2 places to the right, and this becomes 6.5%. And so that is our A here. To write 3/10 as a fraction, we're going to read that accurately, as we would have to if we were in a math class and we were practicing how to read decimals accurately. So this is 3/10. Another way to think about that is we're going to take the decimal number and make it the numerator. We're going to put a 1 with as many zeros as there are numbers behind the decimal point. So this would be a 1 and 1 0. So that should be 3/10, which is our B here. Our next one, to write this as a fraction, remember that percents always mean out of 100. That's what a percent sign means, out of 100. So this would be 7 out of 100. And then if we could reduce it, we would, but that one can't be reduced. So that's A there. This one says the length of a worm is 3.25 inches. Write this as a fraction in simplest form. Well, the whole number isn't going to be part of the fraction. That's going to be a whole number. And then we have 25, so we take the decimal part and make it the numerator. And if I read this accurately, it'd be 25 hundredths. Or I can think, well, I've got to have a 1 down here with 2 zeros because there are 2 numbers behind the decimal point. This asks us to reduce to lowest terms. Both 25 and 100 can be divided by 25, and so this becomes 3 1/4 as a fraction in lowest terms. Number 8 asks us to write, it says Jose answered 9 out of 10 correct on a test. Write his score as a percent. You probably already know that that's 90% without doing any work at all. But just a reminder, 9 out of 10 is the decimal 0.9. And to change that to a percent, we would move that decimal point 2 places to the right. And that's how we would get our 90% there. So that's our A. Next one says, Will ate 4 out of 5 cookies on the plate. What percent of cookies did he eat? Well, that's 4 out of 5. Now, that's one of our memory ones, so you might remember that that's 80% right off the bat there. But if we had to change this without knowing that memory, remember we would take 4 and we would divide it by 5. That looks like this, 4 in the house, 5 out of the house. Again, you can use a calculator, but if you didn't, it would look like this. 5 divides into 48 times, so 0.8 then changed to a percent. Move that decimal point 2 places to the right, and we would get our 80% here. And so our answer is A. Number 10 asks us, are these all equivalent, true or false? And you might remember from our memory work, this is one of our memory items that we were supposed to remember, but 1/5 is equal to 0.2. If you don't remember, you can take 1 and divide it by 5, you'll get 0.2. And of course, if we move that decimal point 2 places to the right, that would be equal to 20%. So that is true. That's true. The next one, we know that 4 out of 100 is equal to 4%, because that's what this means, 4 out of 100. But 0.4, that's 4 tenths, not 4 hundredths. So these are not equal. Okay, on our next one, if we move our decimal point 2 places to the right, that would equal 160%. And if we convert 1 3/5 to its decimal form, it would be 1.6, because 3 divided by 5 would give us the 0.6. So this one is true. All 3 of those are equal. Writing as a mixed number in simplest form, we leave the whole number a whole number, that's 2. And then we take this decimal and make it 4 over a 1 with 1 0, because there's one spot behind the decimal point, or 2 4/10. Both 4 and 10 can divide by 2, so we need to reduce. And so this becomes 2 2/5. And so we would want that B to make sure we reduce that. Next one to write as a mixed number in simplest form. First, I'm going to change it to a decimal. So remember, I do that by moving this decimal point 2 places to the left. So this becomes 1.25. So I know I have the whole number 1. I have 25 as my numerator, because the decimal part's the numerator. I have a 1 and 2 zeros as my denominator, or 25 hundredths. And then we know that 25 over 100 reduces to 1/4, because we already did that earlier. So we know that this should be A. Next one, writing as a fraction in simplest form. So we know that percents mean out of 100. So this is 22 out of 100. Those are both even, so at least we can divide them both by 2. 22 divided by 2 is 11, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. I can't divide 11 and 50 by the same number, so we are done, and that will be B there. Okay, I want to compare 77% and 3/5 to see which one is larger. I'm going to take my 3/5, and we have already discovered that that's 0.6, and 0.6 as a percent means we move this decimal point 2 places to the right, so this is 60%, also one that we should have had memorized. And so 77%, sorry, I made my wrong symbol there, is greater than 60%, so we want B here. Okay, comparing 1 3/10 and 1 3/5, we're going to change this to a fraction, so 3 becomes the numerator. We need a 1 with 1 0, or 3/10, all right? You might already know that 1 3/10 is going to be less than 1 3/5, but we can change this to tenths by just multiplying both of these by 2, and you'll see that that is 1 6/10, and so 1 3/10 is less than 1 6/10. So we need to choose our A option here. Okay, comparing 0.8 and 8%. Remember, if we want to change this to a percent, we're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this would become 80%. So this is much greater than 8%. So we want that guy. 4 out of 12 students at the table had pizza for lunch. What percent of the students had pizza? So this is 4 out of 12. And that reduces to 1/3. Both of these divide by 4 to make that 1/3. Remember, 1/3, that's one of our repeaters, so that's this one B. Remember, 1/3 can be 33 1/3%, 33.3 repeating percent, okay? Number 20 says Jonathan makes 70.5% of the free throws that he attempts. Express his percentage as a decimal. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is make this 70.5, and then I know that to change from a percent to a decimal, so percent to decimal, I'm going to move 2 places to the left, and so this would become 0.705. So that's our first answer there. This one asks us to order from least to greatest. We need to have them all in like terms before we can do that, or like forms. And so I'm going to change my 50% to, let's see, I'll change this to 0.5. That decimal point 2 places to the left. 2/5 we know to be 0.4. Remember, when it's fifths, we just double the numerator. And then this one is 0.42. Now, so that they're all equal, I'm going to add a 0 onto them so that they all look the same to me. Remember, we can add zeros on decimal numbers without changing the values. So our 2/5 is the smallest, and then our 0.42 or 42 hundredths would be next, and then our 50 hundredths or 50% would be last. And so we are looking at this A right here. All right, guys, that is the end of this worksheet review for your quiz.